Hi, this is Andrew with Infinity Cutting Tools. Today I'm back over here at the table saw to do a little bit of table saw tune-up. We get a lot of questions here at Infinity on how to properly set up a table saw to get the best possible performance out of any blade, but especially a precision blade like our Super General blade. To set up a saw, you really ideally need a couple of pieces of equipment that are going to make the job much simpler. The first is something like our digital alignment gauge. This is a base that references off of the miter slot in the table saw top, and a dial or digital indicator. In this case, I have a digital indicator on my base. The second piece of equipment I strongly recommend is a setup disc. This is our set and sand disc, and it is ideal for getting the best possible performance out of your saw blade because it is a true machined flat disc that's going to give us a very clean and truly flat reference point to take our measurements off of. If we try to do this with a saw blade, especially one that has a coating such as the Super General, we're not necessarily going to get the best reading because that surface may have variations in how thick it is that we're going to be able to see with our digital indicator. I'm going to go ahead and zoom you guys in so you can see exactly how I take these measurements so that you can duplicate these tight tolerances on your saws and start getting the absolute best performance out of your machine. Okay, I've got everything set up here on my table saw. The first thing I want to do is raise my arbor all the way up and then just down slightly and then lock the arbor in place. This way I know that the arbor itself is not under any tension. Now I'm going to take my indicator, locate it on my disc about 1/4 of an inch or so inbound from the edge of the disc, and zero out the readout. So now I'm reading a true 0, and I can take my permanent marker and just put a mark here on the disc to reference where the indicator is pointing to for my measurement. Now I'm simply going to rotate the disc and slide the indicator down, and hopefully you can see that I'm still reading a true 0. I want to go ahead and take a couple of measurements, so I'm going to simply rotate the disc to a fresh spot. I can mark the disc with another mark and then simply rotate back, locate it on the same mark, and see what my reading is. This reading is reading slightly differently. The first reading was reading perfectly 0. This one is reading about 1/1000ths different. You can see it was 2/1000ths over here, and now it's reading 1/1000. So we're seeing a very minor difference in the readings. This is normal. The arbor itself may not be absolutely perfect. There may be a difference in the interface between the disc and the arbor, and the bearings themselves can have differences. But checking against the same point, front and back, is the best way to get the most accurate reading. If my saw needs to be adjusted, I've already made my adjustments here. I'm within 1/1000th of an inch, and that is as good as I can expect and going to give me really good results. If I do need to make adjustments, I'm simply going to reference my owner's manual for my saw and follow the instructions in the owner's manual. Different saws have different methods of making these adjustments, so it is important to follow the instructions laid out for you in your owner's manual. Once we have our saw blade set up, we can turn our attention to the fence. I simply move my fence over and get it so that I can locate it against my digital indicator. I want to check the fence in 2 different areas. The first thing I want to see is how much variation there is in this face. I want to see this face to be as perfectly true as possible. So as I set my indicator and I slide it up and down the face of the fence, I'm watching it to see where there are high spots and low spots on this face. Most of these faces are held on with screws through the body of the fence, and we can loosen and tighten those screws and take out humps or valleys in the fence. And if we have areas that we just can't get quite flat, we can always take this plate off and shim it. Some tape, such as masking tape, works great as a shim. It stays in place. We can layer up the shim of tape however we need to and tighten everything back down until we get this face perfectly flat. That's going to give you a lot better results with your table saw. Once we have this face perfectly flat, we can set about getting the angle of our fence set properly. I want to make sure that my fence is either perfectly parallel to my blade or slightly toe out, so it would be facing in this direction so that we have a bit of relief between the blade and the fence at the back or the exit of the cut. When I say we want some toe out, the amount of toe is fairly important as well. We don't want so much that we have a sloppy fit. It can actually cause burning on the other side of the blade. So we want it reasonably tight tolerance. I would like to see perfectly parallel to maybe 2/1000ths of an inch of toe out from the front of the blade to the back of the blade. So if I was measuring, I would measure roughly from this point all the way over to where the back of the blade would be, about 10 inches in the center of the blade of the fence to get a true reading. That's where I want to see. If I know everything is nice and tight, we're right on the money here, I'm going to get really good results. If you follow these steps to dial in the performance of your table saw, I'm sure you'll get the best possible results every time you make a cut.